The world faces a lot of problems. Everything seems to be falling apart. Our problems seem to be insurmountable. But the worst of our problems all have one root cause. Our money itself is broken. Hello, I'm David Conger for Cognizea LLC. We seldom think about money. It's just there. We accept it and use it, but we don't really think about money itself, except possibly to wish we had more of it. But the reality is that our definition of money is centuries old. It was invented for a different time when the needs of civilization were different. In fact, the definition of our money stretches back at least to the time of the Roman Empire, and our fractional reserve banking system was created in the 1600s. This was a time when all the countries of the world were still monarchies, and the dominant medical treatment for virtually all illnesses was bloodletting, meaning the doctors would cut you and let you bleed, or stick leeches on you and let the leeches suck your blood. Those were times when people did not understand science in general and economics in particular like we do today. Because we persist in defining our money the way low-tech and often feudal cultures did, we are creating problems for ourselves unnecessarily. Simply rethinking what money is and how we use it can solve many of the largest problems our civilization faces. In this presentation, I'll give you some examples of why this is so. I'll introduce the kind of money we use and how it gets created. I'll also cover how these two aspects of money generate problems for us unnecessarily. At Cognizea LLC, we are creating software tools to help you reclaim economic democracy and build a more sustainable world without increasing taxes, without the redistribution of wealth, without taking away anyone's freedoms, and without increasing government regulations. It's important to understand that the kind of money we use creates poverty, makes government bigger, gives advantages to big business, drives overconsumption, wastes resources, and creates ecological disasters. These are all big topics, and discussing them all would be too much for this presentation, but let's just take a look at the first two. So first we'll address how our money and the system that creates it guarantees that there will always be poverty. To understand why our particular kind of money generates poverty, we need to know how our money gets created. Most money is not created by the government. Banks create the majority of our money. Bank money is created by debt. Debt money forces some people into poverty no matter what. Suppose you have $10 million that you deposit in the bank. What does the bank do with it? In our system, the bank holds on to 10% of that money, or $1 million. The bank lends out the other 90% of the money, or $9 million, so that they can make money on your money. That's how they make a profit. But here's the important thing. The bank counts the full value of the deposit and the full value of the loan as its assets. In other words, it now has $19 million in assets, even though only $10 million was deposited. Where did the extra money come from? They just created it out of thin air. So now the bank has created another $9 million in assets. What do they do with it? They lend it out. When someone borrows $9 million, they're going to deposit it in a bank. So the cycle starts all over again. The bank holds 10%, the bank lends 90%, and counts the deposit plus the loan as its assets. Because it's lending 90%, this time the loan is $8,100,000. Again, the bank repeats the cycle, and again they hold 10%, lend 90%, and the new loan is $7,200,000. The bank holds 10%, the bank lends 90%, and so on. This keeps going until the initial deposit of $10 million becomes $90 million. But wait, what about the interest? The banks created the money to lend out, but they want to be paid back with interest. For example, If you have a mortgage, you pay 2.5 to 3 times what you borrowed. But the banks haven't created that money. Neither has the government. Where does it come from? The answer is, some people in our system must fail financially. They will fall into poverty and lose everything. They have to. Our system requires it because there isn't enough money to pay back the debt that has been created. Over time, the number of people in poverty must increase. It's important to realize that currency is not value neutral. That is, the kind of currency you use affects people's behavior. Our currency system creates artificial levels of competition. Things just don't have to be this hard. Someone must lose, but no one wants it to be them, of course. This is exactly how our money system works. And it's all because the banks and the governments don't create enough money for the interest that we need to pay on the loans that we've taken out. Debt-based money always creates losers, no matter how well people manage their financial affairs. Our monetary system causes other consequences as well. To pay back the debt-generated money, the economy must constantly grow. A growing economy creates more money. That enables us to pay back yesterday's debt plus yesterday's interest. The economic growth brings a higher standard of living, and that's a good thing. There are some scientists that have estimated that our rapidly growing economy has exceeded the Earth's capacity to heal itself by as much as 30%. In other words, we're running out of time. A growing economy forces the population to grow. There needs to be an increasing number of people to make it go. But of course, that consumes even more resources. And as the economy grows, more debt money must be created. This starts the cycle all over again, but we're running out of resources. And sometime between 2060 and 2070, the global population will peak out at about 9 billion and then begin to decrease very rapidly. That means that the economy will no longer grow and the debts can no longer be repaid. The only future for us is economic collapse. As dire as that sounds, it is true. We've heard a lot about the so-called 1% lately. If we look at the income disparity between the top 1% of earners in any country on earth and the bottom 50%, we see that the income gap between them is at an all-time high. The disparity between the rich and the poor is growing like never before. And that's because our money system is designed to move money from the many to the few. It was designed and created to enrich monarchs, aristocrats, and big business. This is an important point. Our monetary system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, and it's doing it extremely well. We cannot have fairness in our monetary system, no matter how hard we try. Unless we change the money itself, we are just treating symptoms instead of causes. It's time to rethink our money. Cognosea LLC gives you the tools to do exactly that. Now let's look at how our money and our money system affects our government. Our government has a monopoly on our currency. We see that as normal, even though there were many periods in history when that was not the case. The government shares control over the creation of money with the banking industry. Because of this monopolistic cartel, we as citizens have no choice in our currency. We must go with what the government gives us. Did you know that all inflation in our economy is caused by the government? It's true. Constant inflation is an artificial problem that the government creates. Government can do this because they have monopoly control over our currency. Why would government create inflation? Well, there are two basic reasons. First, the government uses its monetary policy to play Santa Claus. Second, the government uses its monetary policy to temporarily fix unemployment problems. Let's examine each of these in detail. First, let's look at how the government uses monetary policy to play Santa Claus. Politicians being politicians, they always want votes. So politicians pass bills to spend on special interest groups. Government borrows the money from someplace like China. To make its payments, the government prints more money. Special interest groups get the goodies and deliver the votes. The politicians get elected just like they want. They do this at the expense of everybody else. But now there's more money in the economy than it can handle, so prices go up, and they usually go up much faster than wages, so everyone's money doesn't go as far. In other words, we're all becoming poorer. All the goodies that the government gave out in the last election are now seen as needs. It doesn't matter whether it's welfare, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, farm subsidies, corporate bailouts, or whatever. Eventually, everyone is in a special interest group fighting for a handout. The government must constantly come up with new goodies to give out in order to get elected. But remember that there is no free lunch. We pay for everything the government gives out. Our obligations have already exceeded our ability to pay. History shows that this always ends in hyperinflation. The government does its best to stave off hyperinflation by seizing people's assets. This is all caused by the fact that the government, in conjunction with the banks, have a monopoly over the currency that we use. Now let's take a quick look at how the government uses inflation to temporarily fix unemployment. In a normal market economy, everything is based on the supply of goods and services. Over time, the supply goes up and down. The demand for those goods and services also changes over time. But sometimes, supply and demand become out of balance. Too much of a product or service is being produced. For example, there might be too many hat makers, or maybe there are too many donut makers. Some of the people should go into other types of work. For instance, some hat makers should go make coats, or some of the donut makers should become restaurant chefs. The market can correct this problem all on its own. Non-interference by the government especially produces the most stable economy. But when you're a politician, you live and die on your image. Elected officials get worried. Unemployment makes them look bad. They try to fix things by pumping money into the economy. Banks lend the money at a low interest rate. Cheap money enables businesses to do more of what they're already doing. But remember that supply and demand are already out of balance. Now the market is producing more of the same goods and services, making everything more out of balance. For a time, unemployment goes down, usually until the next election. But because there's too much money circulating, prices go up. There's a bigger mismatch between supply and demand. Unemployment rises higher than before. This becomes a cycle of boom and bust, each cycle worse than the one before. So guess what? Government tries to fix the boom-bust cycle by increasing its control over the economy. Government control increases with each iteration of the cycle. They always find someone besides themselves to blame. Banks, Wall Street, the 1%, anyone but themselves. They take so much control that eventually government controls all aspects of human life. Government then uses its power to stifle dissenters, as we've seen recently with the IRS, the EPA, and other government agencies specifically targeting the current administration's political opponents. Eventually, democracy must perish. There is no other outcome of this boom and bust cycle. This is all caused by the fact that the government and the banks have monopoly control over our currency. To reiterate, government has complete control over our currency. The value of the dollar is completely controlled by the government. Now, there is a little wiggle room in there, and currency traders use that wiggle room to make some money. It's caused by the market going up and down, but the basic price of the dollar against other currencies is completely controlled by the government. If the dollar becomes worthless, we have no recourse. Political democracy requires economic democracy. It is time to rethink money. Cognosea is building tools that can help you create new, stable, humane forms of money that will solve society's problems without increasing taxes, redistributing wealth, or robbing us all of our freedoms. We have many videos and learning materials on our website to explain exactly how you can do that. Thank you.